Fiona Peart. I'm going to be painting for you a picture of a street scene. It's actually called The Red Stockings, which will be apparent a little bit later on. Now I've drawn out the painting and I'm going to start by painting the sky. I'm using some French ultramarine, nice and wet. I actually want some of this colour to run into the buildings. I don't want it to just stay on the sky. So nice and wet, big brush, fill it all in, right up to the edge there. And then with these buildings, I'm going to start using cadmium yellow deep. Now this is a really strong colour, very, very powerful. It's almost an orange. This is why they call it cadmium yellow deep, because it's such a deep colour. And it's really important that you catch the edge of the sky. Well, I think it is. I think it's lovely when watercolour actually runs. So I'm going to let it. I want to make it run, really. All this area here, I'm just going to bring this down, nice and wet, add some more water to it. The whole of this area here. Now this is going to look quite orange, which we want, but I'm going to introduce a little bit of pink. So this is getting the base of our painting, it's getting the warmth on the buildings. Now this street scene is actually quite dark in places. It's on a dull day, but the colours are what's so interesting about it, and I'm going to get as much warmth in it as possible. Now a little bit of permanent rose. Now you'll notice I keep the colours separate on the palette. So clean the brush out. So it's a nice wet brush. Now into this cadmium yellow deep, I'm now going to be dropping in the permanent rose. Now the wetter it is, the more it'll move. If it starts to dry, just coax it in a little bit. That's the good thing about watercolour, you can just change it a little bit. Now at the same time, this area is still wet. I'm going to do this building and then I'm going to move straight onto those. So I'm watching that little edge. I do want that to stay nice and wet. Now I'm mixing the permanent rose and the cadmium yellow. Let's get this little rooftop on here. Just let it touch the sky. That's okay. You know, people worry that the watercolour is going to run. Yep, it will. And I quite like that. Now this building's white. Really clean the brush out. I'm watching this all the time. I don't want that to dry, but I want some of this roof to go into this building. So I'm just going to drag the brush down. So it's just water on my brush and a hint of blue. I want to get rid of just the white paper. It's a white building, but we don't want it plain white. We want it just a hint of blue. Just continue all the way down, just wetting the building. Nice big brush. Really push the brush into the paper. That's nice. We want this to happen. I want that to run over there. Now, before I lose that nice damp edge, I know it's safer just to wait, but actually I'm going to put the roof. So back to those two colours again. So I've only used the three colours. Scoop a little bit of that in. So we've got quite a bright roof here. Now the sunshine's going to hit this, so I want that a nice bright colour. That's nice. You see, I love it when watercolour does this. If I didn't want it to happen, I'd just wait. So back to my cadmium yellow deep. I'm going to get this whole area done, keep it nice and wet. This is going to be the light on the side of the building. So I'm going to have shadow here and light on this side. So this part I want fairly dark. I'll put a slightly darker colour here. We want to keep a glow at the bottom of the painting. Let it run in there a little bit, don't worry about that. When we get to the bottom here, I just want to put a little bit of warmth in there. Oh, it's looking lovely already. Don't you just love those colours? They're fabulous. This side of the building, I want to keep this nice and wet. Push the brush into the paper, let it catch the sky. That's probably dried by now. It's surprising how quickly it does dry, but that's okay as long as we've got some bits running here. If I just take a base colour, so a little bit more warm, so I'm just going to flatten the whole brush, push the whole brush into the paper, really push it. That's going to push the water into the fibres of the paper. The paper I'm using is Bockingford. It's £140. So it's a wood pulp paper. Now, this is the tricky bit. You want to get some blue, and the tricky bit is not to put too dark a blue. It's a little bit risky, but it's fun. You're going to drop it into the bits of the painting that's on the shadow side. In other words, the light's coming here, so I want light down the side of the building. This is going to be in shadow. So I'm just going to tap the French Ultra down the buildings. Under the awnings will obviously be a little bit darker, and you can see how the colours change straight away. Under here, a bit of blue. It's daring, but it pays off. Now the next stage, I'm going to wet the painting at the bottom. I want all the reflections of all these colours down at the bottom of the picture. So just wet this, wet this. This colour is going to run, and that's normal. Let it go. You've got to just let watercolour go. If you worry about the watercolour running, don't paint wet in wet, because it is going to run. It's just one of those things, and actually that's so nice just letting the colours go. So this side, look at what's above and try and drop in the same sort of colours below. So here's this colour, we're just going to drop that in. Just let it fall down the bottom. There's some of that yellow. Let's put some of that in, a little bit more. Now remember, the paper's wet, so you can afford to put stronger colours on. So just let it go. This is obviously that soft blue, so clean the brush out into the blue, ever so soft. I just want to bring that down the middle. That's nice. Then here we've got, again, the yellows. Now this is not so yellow, so we'll just put the yellow and the pink to make it this orange colour. Just drop that colour in, watch as it comes down the page. And then we've got the yellow and the orange there. That takes us to the bottom of the page. Now we've got to drop in the blues. A little bit more blue. Make sure the brush is nice and wet, but not dripping wet. Look at where you dropped in the blue and just do the same. Just tap, tap, tap. Just let it drop in. Scoop up a bit more blue. Put a little bit here. Ignore the figures, just pretend they're not there. So now I'm just going to let that dry. So now that's completely dry, I'm going to start at the back of the painting with the building, a little bit of French ultra. So we're keeping the same 3 colours. So all we want to do is a little block of colour, few little cross lines perhaps, to give the impression of shutters. You don't want it solid. So you're not kind of colouring in, you're just giving a nice block of colour there, but you want to keep a little bit of white. Then a little bit of blue towards the bottom. Now, there's an archway here, but I want some blue underneath. The archway is going to be a lot darker, but I just want to give a little bit of colour in between here, so a bit of blue. Then into that blue, I'm going to mix some permanent rose. So this is our dark colour now. A little bit of the cadmium yellow deep again. This is how we're going to mix our darks. So we've just used those 3 colours, and I'm just going to block in the little oblongs on the window. So it's just 4 little oblongs, and don't make them absolutely perfect. You want this to look like it's a nice, simple little painting, nice and loose. So it's a nice big brush, good point on the brush. Then on the top of those windows, so clean the brush out, keep that part of your palette the slightly darker colour. So I use the whole of the palette, or in this case my little kitchen tile. I use the whole palette for mixing. So put a little bit there. Then we'll start to move on to these buildings here. These are going to be much brighter, so onto my other tile, so into the pink. Now this pink, it's really bright, it's permanent rose. It's a fabulous bright colour. I'm going to go down. Now you'll find, it was interesting when you've already put some paint onto a wood pulp paper, because when you go back again, it's much easier, the paint flows better. So if you want a dry brush effect, it's always easier to put it on dry paper first, unused paper, rather than once it's been painted on. Because although this is completely dry, the paint goes on quite differently, which I always think is quite interesting. Into the yellow, so this is the cadmium yellow deep, which is far more yellow in this. So we're just going to drag this down on this building. A little bit more water, bring it down. Now there's a street sign of some sort here. Doesn't matter if they go across like this, you're not trying to keep them separate. But I'm trying to keep this area wet because I'm going to drop in some darks. Now this is going to be an awning, so I want to keep that fairly light. But underneath I'm going to drop in the blue again. So my little rule is, if it's in shadow, we put cool colours like blues, and if it's in the sunshine, I'm going to put nice warm colours. It's a simple little rule, does work for me. So, there's the awning. Now underneath here is going to be blue, we're going to drop in some blue, so all this has got to still be wet. I'm just going to clean the brush out, I'm just going to push that, just to bring a little bit of that colour in so it's not too stark. Now, this area, we want to put some of these blues into the shadows. So just scoop the brush into the blue, and then we're just going to spot it on from the awning. So just tap, 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 ever so easy. And then under here, we'd have a little bit. Tap, tap, tap. And a little bit on the side of that wall. Now, I've missed a bit here. So back into the pink, still a little bit damp. You want to keep little bits unpainted. So this is like a pillar, and it's going to come behind those figures. So we're going to add a darker shadow to this side of the building, so let's just brighten up the nice sunny parts. So into the yellow again. So again, warm colours in the sunshine, and remember this colour is going to go on much easier. So just press the brush, you'll see straight away a block of colour. Now I want light on these awnings, a little bit of permanent rose into here. So all I'm doing is making the colours a little bit more vibrant. It's not possible to get all the information down in the first layer of paint, so always add a little bit more. You'll notice now the building at the back is pushed back because all these bright colours are coming forward. Now the side of this building, I'm just going to push the brush so that we get a little bit of texture on the side of the building and a little bit of permanent rose, not too much. That's better. Okay, now we must make sure this is dry and then we'll drop the shadow on.